Welcome to this week of Missouri Politics. Last week's session, we are here with the woman whose office everything's going to run through in this last week, Senate Majority Floor Leader Cindy O'Loughlin. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me on.
Congratulations. I will say there was lots of folks that said there could be no budget on time, the Senate has too many problems, and I tell you, you delivered a budget on time.
Well, I have to give credit to a lot of the people in the Senate. I mean, I can start conversations with people, but without their help, things don't get done. So when it really comes down to the end, most of the people knew we had to pass the budget and we had to pass the FRA, and everybody got together and we got it done.
So this year, though, it was a little more House ideas and concepts in the budget in the Senate. I saw Senator Rowden on the floor basically be like, well, you know, we have a problem with Senator Raychel he was talking to, getting it through you twice, and it really handcuffed the Senate. Is that what your take on what happened?
Yes, I mean, I think I've read somewhere that the Freedom Caucus is the Democrats' best weapon.
Oh, God, yes. Brian Williams, I mean, he hasn't even worn out a full pair of shoes yet, having a filibuster. The Republicans
Yes.
go for it.
Right. I mean, where they come together is the Freedom Caucus says they want something, and basically, really, it's what every Republican wants in some form or another, but they want the very furthest point. They want us to get to the very furthest point, and we can't get there. And the Democrats, so that stops us. And the Democrats, of course, even though we want the same things too, they want to get there a different way, so sometimes they make it where we can't get there. So the two together can be kind of hard to get past.
Well, they're good dancing partners to make your life
Yes.
harder, right? I mean,
Yes.
the FRA, it's so hard to describe that to regular folks. There will be no hospital in Kirksville, right, or Hannibal without an
Right.
FRA. Senator Raychel and his crew use that as a negotiating leverage to just say, well, we'll end rural hospitals. When we come back around, you guys got that done, too, on time, in the budget, sent over to the House. Some would say a day early.
Well, so we had the 40-hour or whatever it was filibuster that, after about the first 25 hours, you start getting tired and angry. And I'm sitting in there at about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I hear Senator Hoskins say, yay, we've made it past 40 hours. We should have champagne out here on the Senate floor. And I'm thinking, well, you haven't really won anything. And I'm looking at staff who has been held up for all that time. And, that's when we decided we need to put an end to this. No, we don't mind people who stand up for what they truly believe. I think that's part of the Senate. But in the end, if you're just doing it for news coverage, which is really what it turned out to be, because we didn't budge. The idea was...
To ask you straight, there's been a lot of people talk about this. You're the person you're the one in charge of it. After the 40 hours, did they get any concessions out of you?
No.
Yeah, it didn't look like it.
It was like the gubernatorial appointment thing, where, we said, well, here's what we'll do. They said no. 24 hours later, they said yes. And on this, they wanted initiative petition reform, which, if you remember, they held up the Senate for about a month in the beginning talking about it. They wanted it to go before the FRA and the budget. Well, I have common sense, and I'm thinking, no, we have a deadline for the budget. So we need to do that first. Then we'll go back to initiative petition reform. We'll see where that goes, and we'll have plenty of time. And that's what
you
we
did
did.
Monday. It looks like, so you ended session Thursday with about a half-hour discussion on the IP reform that I don't think anybody felt like the final resolution was going to come Thursday after the lengthy budget day.
Right.
So session comes in tomorrow. You come in at 2. Do you go to the FRA? Or the IP reform, excuse me?
We're coming in at noon. There will be a lot of discussions over the weekend, and I know that the Republicans feel, and I feel this way too, we as a legislature are all elected, presumably to represent the people and their thoughts about what things should be and shouldn't be. And we refuse to do certain things like recreational marijuana, expand Medicaid, not because we don't worry about people who are poor, but because we feel it can consume the budget in a hurry. And
well, let me just ask you out of the cabbage. Do you think it should be harder to amend the Missouri Constitution?
yes,
I think most folks feel that way, that actually observe it and pay attention. Do you think you can pass that, make that case to the people of Missouri straight up, that this should be harder to amend your Constitution?
well, we're going to try.
Do you think you have to have some of these distractions, like Clean Missouri was, a public policy goal wrapped with a bunch of just silliness? Do you think you need that silliness to pass it?
Some people do think that.
End of the day, I think the question that I guess most folks will wonder when they drive to Jeff City on Monday morning, would you be willing to break the Senate and PQ in order to get the distractions added to the IP reform?
That decision hasn't been made. The previous question is a nuclear thing to do.
Terrible day.
And being in my position, I work with the Democrats a lot. I think everybody should work with the Democrats. I mean, they have legitimate concerns too, and actually they help us in a lot of different ways. By refusing to become so ideological that nothing can get done.
Well, being in Senate leadership, working with the Republicans, Peter Kinder did that, Mike Gibbons did that. You go down through the history of the Senate, pull it back over to Matheson and Senator Webster. I mean, the Senate's made to do that. It forces you to do that.
Well, I think it's governing. I mean, and I get the same notes and angry people that say, why are you working with the Democrats? Well, I mean, they're people too. They live in Missouri too. They have legitimate ideas too. Not every Republican idea is good and every Democrat idea is bad. So, let's look for common ground, and we're able to find it most of the time.
Let's talk about a bill I know you worked on hard, the school bill. Charter schools open up in Boone County, something I know Caleb Broudmore his whole career.
Yes.
I don't care what your position is on school choice or whatever. You had to have some appreciation for a guy that served the state very well for, 14 years, and he finally got the thing he wanted done. I know you worked a lot on that. That had to feel good to see the governor sign that.
Yes. I mean, there are people who cannot send their children to public schools and feel that the children will come out successful. And I don't think that anyone should be locked into a particular avenue just because of their zip code. And that's what we've got going on. Do I think there will be, thousands of kids moved to go to different places? I don't believe that. But for those people who need another option, it's another option.
You worked very hard with it. It's got to be nice to see some of the stuff you've been banging that drum on now for 6 years come to fruition. For Planned Parenthood, you banned Planned Parenthood for the 8th ban, triple step, double secret probation ban. Governor got that done. It feels like they've talked about that for so long. If they could get it done, they would have. But another ban, I guess, doesn't hurt, right?
Well, so one of the arguments about the Planned Parenthood ban was that maybe women couldn't access health care. So over a weekend, a couple of weeks ago, I talked to the federally qualified health centers, and I said, do you have plenty of availability for women's health care all throughout the state? And they said they did. So it's really not about health care.
That sounds very like a reasonable thing, and I've not seen anything reasonable really come into the abortion discussion in 20 years. I mean, both sides are so far out on every little thing, it becomes this dramatic, emotional thing. Reasonability on both sides gone.
Well, if you take a strict stand and you appear to be a person who can't understand that sometimes people get in situations that are just untenable for them, and they are desperate for an answer. I've had 4 children, and, I believe that life is God-ordained. I do. I know there are other people who don't believe that, but I think that we do hurt ourselves when we don't expend as much energy trying to help people through difficult situations as we do when we say, no, we don't care what your situation is, but this is not happening. And I think that's how we're perceived, unfortunately.
And do you think that's where the public is? I think there's going to be something on the ballot in August and November. My hunch would be the public is not as pro-life as the Republican caucus in the Missouri Senate.
Well, I made the case to someone that it's a heart problem. So, if the church, which is all of us who are in the church, we're actually the church, if we are not helping people understand how important life is. And if we are not supporting our fellow travelers through this world, they are susceptible to things that, frankly, I think they learn in college.
Do you think this issue, though, is a lot of the pro-life folks? They talk to each other a lot. They very seldom talk to any pro-choice person to persuade them. And I think you say that about pro-choice people. They talk to themselves. They very seldom try to persuade a pro-lifer. It's just anger and rancor. And boy, it's hard to, when you start making public policy, I bet it's two sides that are just so angry and there's no give. What's tough?
It is hard. A couple of weeks ago, I went to St. Louis and spoke to a group of women lawyers. And there were 3 2 representatives, and Senator McCreary was there. Now, I didn't take a poll, but I'm assuming that 95% of those women are on the other side of the aisle from me. And we talked about abortion, and I think I talked about it in a way that hopefully made them stop and think.
Let me ask you about the elections coming up. You've got some folks running for the state Senate to, Democrats, I guess, are running to stop your goals, but you have some Republicans in these primaries running to stop what you want to do, make your life as miserable as they can. Are you going to be involved? I've watched the last few cycles. You've seen the folks that are out to make your day longer and stop what you want to do. They're very organized. They come out publicly, and senators in your caucus advocate for them. And I've watched folks in your position sit back and do nothing. Do you plan to sit back this summer again, or are you going to be engaged for folks that want to advance the Republican agenda?
I want to get to know each person individually, and I think it's really a mistake to categorize someone as either A or B. A lot of times people are a little bit of both. I think the key to being successful is to listen to other people, understand where they come from, talk about what it's like to be in the Senate and how you get things done.
When you're doing procedural motions directed at you to make your life harder, to make the Republican agenda stalled, and you're a Republican voting against you on procedural motions, it does seem to be pretty easy to put people in different camps.
Well, I'm not a patient person, so I don't know really how I've gotten along in this job, but I have. And I always remind myself that there's another view besides your own. A lot of what is done is purely political.
What's one bill that you'd like to see moved, or you think would be good for the state if it's in limbo right now, that if the logjam broke, it might get through?
Well, Senator Searpoy has a utilities bill. That got killed on the last day last year. And it has a lot of little fixes and things in it. I'd like to see that get done.
There's a lot of good stuff with Rule Missouri, too, right?
Right, exactly.
Senator, best of luck next week. Thank you very much for joining us. I appreciate it. Hope you'll come back maybe after those primaries and talk about the new caucus you have on This Week in Missouri Politics.
Thank you.
We'll be right back after this. Phil Christofanelli joins us. We get back from the break.
For more than a century, the St. Louis Carpenters Union has shaped our communities. Through trusted alliances, we deliver skilled professional craftspeople while our business partners provide the kind of quality jobs that keep our economy humming. It's a blueprint that has worked since 1882. Turning Missouri into a right-to-work state stalls progress, wipes out jobs, and kills momentum. Right to work is wrong for everyone. Let's keep Missouri moving forward. Visit carpdc.org to learn more.
Missourians know that big futures have small beginnings. That's why over 86% of Missouri voters believe early childhood education is essential to success later in life. While almost every voter agrees expanding access to childcare will attract jobs and help more parents succeed at work. And more than 7 in 10 Missouri voters say improving early childhood education will make our communities safer. Find out how you can help grow Missouri's bright future at mochampionofchildren.com.
When I take office, the first thing I'm going to do when my hand comes off the Bible is enact our Day One crime plan.
Kehoe's plan: support law enforcement, remove liberal prosecutors, crack down on illegal immigration and sanctuary cities, charge fentanyl dealers with murder.
Those things are what it takes to be tough on crime and make sure that we get our communities back.
Endorsed by law enforcement, Mike Kehoe for governor. Paid for by the American Dream PAC.
Data captured by our state-of-the-art monitors helps us pinpoint the timing and location of severe weather more accurately and respond to trouble more quickly. Ameren, Missouri's investment in smart technologies like this is one way we're improving reliability and restoring power faster than ever. Responding to trouble before trouble hits. That's energy at work. Ameren, Missouri.
Welcome back. This week in Missouri Politics, the last 2 weeks of session time, we are joined by a panel. Alex Rowley, Springfield, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Raychel, Proudie, North County, appreciate the time. Love the brooch.
Thank you.
You take the pen and you make it classy. I like that. Cameron Parker, the political star of the Boot Hill, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And Phil Christofanelli from St. Charles, thanks for making the time.
Glad to be here.
Alex, let's talk about the budget. How long have you been in the legislature?
4 years. Wrapping up my
You have
fourth.
never seen the House write much of the budget. This year, they wrote the whole damn thing.
Yeah, that's right. And for me, it's less of a focus on who's winning between the House.
But it's nice to win.
I'm not complaining about the way the process played out, but I do think that at the end of the day, the focus was on securing a balanced, conservative, fiscally responsible budget on time, and that's what we're delivering for the people of Missouri this week.
Representative, you had a big week in the budget. I mean, you've been here 2 years. You completed an entire interstate quality highway in your district.
Yes, I'm super excited about I-57 or 67 South, as we call it. So that stays in. Very happy, very proud.
And it is kind of nice. You were here last year. Probably not a lot of House stuff was in the budget. This year, I mean, you're living proof. There's a lot of House stuff in this budget.
Well, thank you. So I'm excited about it for sure. So.
Phil, probably the best strategies they have in the House. I don't know that maybe you don't owe a bit of a fine bottle of wine or a game ball to Jim Lemke on this. End of the day, though, I mean, it's got to feel good to have whatever's in the budget. You got to feel good. Most of it's House stuff.
Ultimately, the budget process is designed to advantage the Senate, but the unique dysfunction that the Senate has faced this year provided a perfect opportunity for us to execute more leverage than we've ever had in the 8 years that I've been here. And I was glad to help be a part of that process.
Well, let's walk through it. I mean, from the governor's budget, you left about $2.5 billion. If you're going to drive from your house to Alex's, and I guess on down to Cody Smith's in Joplin, something on I-44 is going to get fixed with almost $1 billion, right?
I would hope so. And, every time I drive to see my friend Cody, I am reminded about how desperately we need that.
I always drive a little faster north on 44 than south, but you do have some good, the charter school stuff that got done. I mean, there's a lot of things alike. Raychel, Proudie, this budget, I mean, while it was skimmed down, you still have that federal money involved. So there's still a lot of things alike.
Sure. I actually asked the senator last week what was taking them so long to kick the budget back to us. And he looked at me and said, well, this is chess, not checkers. It is checkers. And the objective shouldn't be to play the more intricate game or beat your chest about knowing the rules of a more intricate game, but rather to play a better match of the game being played. And I think the House just did it better this year.
I think so. I think they had a little help from some folks in the Senate. But, I mean, sure, you sit on that House budget. There is no better place to learn to state government than the House budget.
Agreed.
You sit on that thing for a while. It's got to feel good this year to say, yeah, I recognize a lot of those things. They came to us.
I will say there are some things in House Bill 10 and 11 I would have traded the millions I got in the budget this year for. But, when it comes to process, I wish Democrats were a little bit more involved. It was really like this is really a Republican.
Well, when there's no conference committee, it cuts the Democrats out, right?
Completely. Yeah, that's what it feels like.
So budget goes through. We're taping this. I always like to say for the last 2 weeks, we're taping this on Friday morning. Budget goes through fine, right?
Yeah, I anticipate that we'll have the votes to pass it through the House. We'll see. It's right? That's right. We'll see. It'll be interesting to see what the Democrats do on it, but I think that we'll have at least 82 Republican votes today.
It feels right. Let's talk about IP reform. Phil, the Senate went to IP reform for about 20 minutes. It was like an exhibition game. Nobody took it seriously. Everybody was leaving. They're going to go back to it tomorrow on Monday. Tell me what happens here. Will you guys accept something that doesn't have we'll call it the ballot candy in it?
Well, I think the House will pass the IP reform if it does come back, but my hope is that it doesn't, that the Senate just finishes this issue one way or another.
Takes it with the ballot candy.
That's right.
You're a guy that understands policy and politics. Can you pass changing the IP reform system without all these distractions?
It is going to be very difficult to get it through the Senate, but I believe that it's a priority for that caucus.
If you put it on the ballot with just, hey, should we make it harder to amend the Constitution? Can the Republicans win that argument?
I think that there has to be a significant funding and a campaign to make this message to the voters. But right now, Scott, we have marijuana in our Constitution. We have bingo in our Constitution. It's an embarrassment, and the people on the street understand that. And if we get the messaging right, I think we can.
Okay, so you were sitting on a fence post in Marquand. Can you really sit on that fence post and explain to somebody, well, non-citizen voting and all these things are distractions? You ought to go along with this or whatever. Or is it just true you need those distractions because you can't explain to that old boy why it should be harder to amend the Constitution?
I agree with the second point. I mean, you can't just sit there and talk. They're not going to buy it. In our Southeast Missouri, I think they're going to be like, well.
But if you say, hey, St. Louis letting all these illegal Mexicans vote, well, we're going to stop this.
Right.
That's what you say.
Yes, absolutely.
Is that how you should be? You're attorney. Is that how you should do? Did the court open the door to this with Clean Missouri? When the court let Clean Missouri go through, which is the same thing, I think it opened a major floodgate for some stuff just like this. And are you guys just playing the hand you're dealt?
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think it did open the floodgate for sure. And we do have to play the hand we're dealt this time. So we'll just see.
Alex, you and I have talked this before. I mean, you were dealt this hand. I mean, Speaker Blocker was actually in front of me and says, yeah, the court said this is legal. This is the rules of the game. So we're going to play by them. I mean, when a guy just opened up and says it, yeah, sure. Hard to argue with his logic, right?
So I do reject the notion that this is just ballot candy because these are substantive changes to the state constitution. So they're
substantive. Shouldn't they be in separate questions if they really are substantial?
So not necessarily, because the difference between what is in the Senate Joint Resolution under discussion right now in Clean Missouri, for example, is all of these things do relate to the voting process and specifically the constitutional amendment making process. So when we're talking about the citizen issue, there's Article 8 in Missouri's Constitution says that all citizens in Missouri, all citizens of the United States may vote in Missouri. There's no prohibition in the state constitution that provides that only citizens may vote. That is a very important distinction. All and only are very different things. So that does provide a change in the state constitution that is not otherwise there.
But even you admit, you're an attorney, so you understand the concept. Conflating these issues together is a little shady.
I don't think so, because I think that they truly relate to each other, because we're talking about making changes to the state constitution, the most fundamental document of our state that governs the entire state through this election process. So I think it's directly related to
Raychel,
each other.
is there a little shady?
It's very shady.
Is this thing a little shady?
Yes. So the only difference I see, and if anyone's looking for a Democrat to defend Clean Missouri, you're barking up the wrong dam. We repealed the ballot candy part of Clean Missouri, for the most part, besides the gifts and the
you left the candy, you took the protein.
We took the part. Yeah. That was like you said, the meat and potatoes. Look, I agree with you that it doesn't pass without all this other stuff. It pains me that we're using those. Mexicans are coming to get us as the driving force. I live in St. Louis County, but if they're registered voters and citizens of the state of Missouri, then yeah.
Because you think there's a difference there. The rest of us, we're just like St. Louis. Separate field. He knows there's a difference.
But yes, the bill is terrible. It's a terrible bill. It's ballot candy. It's shiesty.
Well, will there be $1 million put to pass this if you put it on the ballot either way?
That's what you need. Whether it will be there or not remains to be seen.
I'm going to say I agree with Phil. No. What do you think? Will anybody fund this?
I don't know.
Will all the lobbyists that are telling these Republicans, oh, you got to do this, will any of them have money behind this when it goes to the ballot?
God, I hope not.
What do you think?
I think that's unlikely.
I do too.
It would have to be a pure grassroots effort.
And tired of all these folks coming to you, wanting you to do these things, banging on you, then none of them put up any money for it. But after you go through this whole fight, then they leave you straight.
It's frustrating for sure.
Let's talk about a bill, Phil. Tell me something. Last week of session, the Senate appears to have a path towards churning some things out. What is something you'd like to see done that's there that could be done?
Well, Scott, I'm a small government conservative. We've passed defunding Planned Parenthood. We passed a major education reform bill this year. We got an FRA and a budget done. I think no one's life, liberty, or safe. Life, liberty, or property is safe so long as the legislature is in session. So let's do IP reform and go home.
You know, I really think it's odd how these narratives start. You just listed 4 major things. I mean, there's been some large public policy done a budget that incorporated kind of your last biggest chunk of federal money. There's been a lot of things that if I'm a Republican, I'm happy about, but it does feel like if you don't pass out the volume of bills, somehow you've let people down. It feels to me like you got a lot to say, a lot to tout come next weekend.
I think we can only do damage going forward. So let's get our final priority across the finish line and go back to the people and start working for our next majority.
Why don't you give me something that is out there that could be done that is in limbo that this coming week you could see pass?
I'll be glad if nothing passes, to be honest with you. But my bill, House bill, there it is. I agree with Christofanelli here. When we're in session, we can do a lot of damage, especially when we're in a rush to do it. But again, the Crown Act has been in the Senate. It's in the Senate now. It is policy. It is something that any freedom-loving patriot would support. But other than that, we don't have to do anything else.
As it is true. I mean, people get frustrated the Senate doesn't pass enough stuff. I would say that is, I'm sure, frustrating. And there are some times that it must get frustrating to see people argue over these personal things, not policy. But really, the only thing scary about the Senate passing a bunch of stuff, that could get really bad to the citizens of this state.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm pretty close to where Phil is. I would say where we've not quite accomplished or checked some boxes is on the pro-business side, doing some things to give our state's economy a shot in the arm. I've got a couple of bills that are still floating around out there that have a really good shot over this next week that would do that, that would provide some opportunities for our entrepreneurs and innovators to bring products and services to market here in Missouri. So I think we can get a couple of those things done next
Pro-business party doesn't focus enough on being pro-business anymore?
100% agree.
I mean, what do you think? Yeah, you don't want to be greedy. You've had such a year, but what would you like to see happen? It's not quite done yet.
Well, I mean, not to be selfish, but I do have a House bill in the Senate. It's on the Senate calendar right now, hearing aid bill. So it would help it was a bipartisan, came out of the House, 152 to nothing. So it helps people get hearing aids. So, I mean, that's...
Got to have super
It's like... so...
That's an old age joke. I'm like, with a minute left, who won the week?
Cody Smith and Lincoln Huff working together to craft a strong, balanced budget that we can all be proud of.
Won the week.
He took mine. I believe Cody Smith singularly won the week.
Yeah, and it's kind of nice. See a good guy have a good day, right?
He is a good guy. I agree with that.
Won the week.
Mine as well. Because Cody, I mean, he's done an excellent job with this budget.
My friend Cody Smith.
You going to order Samuel Jackson? All right, I'm going to break the trend. I'm going to say Ben Brown. You know, a lot of things in the Senate happen on the floor very loudly. One of the key pieces to see in the Senate pass a budget was Ben Brown doing a lot of the quiet work on the sidelines. I think he won the week. Hope you'll join us next week for the end-of-session edition of This Week in Missouri Politics.
This Week in Missouri Politics is sponsored by the Missouri Automobile Dealers Association, Ameren, Spire, and the United Electric Cooperative.